Good evening, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I hope we all were well, and we are at an end for the ranked battles as it is for this season. I want to give my 2 cents and a basic review of the ranked battles overall and what I think has been a difference to how it was before. And so far, it's actually been a fairly positive system, and I've relatively enjoyed it, and I've also seen a lot of other people enjoy it as well. So there is still work to be done, however. So there are some ironing out aspects, but so far, actually fairly useful. I've got a few different spots really to pick on, so I'm going to go in order. We're going to start off with the point system. The way it was done this time was if you're on the winning team, you would get 100 points. If you're on the losing team but you came top, you got 100 points. But if you lost, you got negative 100. So if you came top and you lost, you wouldn't actually gain or lose any points. If you're on the winning team, regardless of how well you did, you got 100 points. For every time you moved up in the league, you got another 100 points, which was ideal. So at least this time around, it was a lot easier to get to the Grandmaster, the highest one, or at least get a lot higher than what you were before. Generally speaking, if you were to go through the leagues, you would get 100 points for boosting up the league, then 2 wins later you'd get into the next league, 2 wins later you get into the next, all the way up to the top. So there were a lot of people who may have not been able to get as high as what they did before, and they did now. So that was a really, really useful spot. But I see this ranked battles, not specifically of your physical placement this time around as being ideal, but more so the point system. So it's better in my opinion, at least for the winning side. You don't have your individual performance at least to take into account. Everyone's really working towards their own goal, which is to get the win for the team. Doesn't matter if you got 0 damage or it doesn't matter if you got 7,000 damage. You're all going to be there for the win. And maybe it encourages people to actually play as a team. Now, obviously, that wasn't always the case because there are certain people who have in some way failed their way to tier 10 and have not yet learned the ins and outs of the game. So it made things a little bit difficult. And I played on the West server, so you tended to come across the same people all the time. It did in some way make it a little bit easier to play as well. Unless you came across your clan mates, then it was a bit more difficult. Next, we'll move on to matchmaking. Because I only played on the West server, there weren't that many people per se, but that's a given, it's ranked battles, there aren't overall that many people in it. And if I'm perfectly honest, I'm not going to look into that too much. What I am going to look into is how the matchmaking places tanks on each team. Now this is a solo battle, so you can't go in platooned, and you would have any tier 10 tank, obviously not premium because we don't have any, and it was based on standard battles. Relatively small maps like your Lake, Liberty, you've got Mines, you've got Ghost Town, Himmelsdorf, Ensk, etc. All relatively small maps. The problem that I would find is you would sometimes see that 6 TDs with a medium on one team, and the other team would get like heavies. So you have a large HP pull for heavies with trolley armor. Everyone's firing premium ammo because of the silver bonus, so that's actually okay. It's a given, it's ranked battles. But there were certain times, for example, if you take Mines, North Spawn, I've had plenty of occasions where there's been 3 mediums on my team and the other team doesn't get any. So the map control is given to the North Spawn, and shooting from above, keeping them back, it's easy to take people out, especially if you have someone trying to do a flanking maneuver. A lot of the times I would see people trying to go Lighthouse, but they weren't able to go too far because they were being spotted by those in the middle, and then if people were up on the hill, they could get shots across. You would take people out who were camping back in TDs, or you'd get the odd person who would go around towards the town and just like on their own. If you're playing in ranked battles, you see a tank on their own, you've got a really good opportunity to be able to go forward and take them out and lower the number of tanks that they have. Keeping people in a stalemate and picking off people who want to go on their own, that's a really good way of winning the game. I would like to see it weighted a little bit better, especially on the back of the fact that if everyone's playing solo, there isn't a requirement to have so many tanks of one variant on one team and so little on the other. Medium tanks played a really good role in ranked battles because of their maneuverability. We'll take into account the Russian mediums because this is generally what you would see is Russian mediums and the Batchat. For example, the T62A and the Object 140 have fantastic heat ammunition, really good armor, very good mobility and very good accuracy. Your Batchat has got its 6-shot burst, high alpha, it can do a lot of damage to tanks that are just sat there in between them firing. And if you've got the backup support of, say, for example, an E4, Death Star, Jack Panzer E100, you can take people out without even too much effort at all. So having a bias towards one side of the team getting more of these tanks over others did influence a lot of games that I played, especially, for example, on Cliff, when we had people who were heavily TDs, so you had like your Japan's 100s, your Death Stars, not exactly quick moving tanks, who would go down Death Valley and leave the entire top open. And when you have, for example, say 4 heavies and 3 tank destroyers, not many people were able to speed up the hills, and if you had mediums on the other team, you could get up to the lighthouse before they could get anywhere near, thus holding them back, maybe working out another position to go. And it did happen, so maybe a little bit of a balancing factor on that. I don't know how well they'd be able to do it. There were times when there was like 30 plus people waiting in the queue and it would still make a mare of it, so I'd like to see something change with regards to that. Next we move on to maps. A lot of these maps were your standard short mini maps, obviously, because it's 7v7. You don't want something like Prokhorovka where people can literally be at the other end of a map. It might cause a bit of an issue with people who want to camp. Maybe if you all rush down one side, it just wouldn't be fun. So we had Himmelsdorf, Mind, Cliff, Ghost Town, Ensk, Liberty Falls, Port, and Wide Park. Wide Park was a really interesting map because I'd seen so many different tactics being employed and then changed over such a short period of time from both spawns and both working. That I would like in a map. People see how things change, and you look at the other team and you see whether they're heavy on TDs, heavy tanks, mediums, and you could sort of guess and gauge where people are going to go. What you don't want to do is what happens sometimes is people getting on their own, again, being taken out. But that one worked well. Ensk, playing that as a medium was very, very good. No one ever seemed to go down the right or the left as you spawn if you're on a north spawn. They all seemed to go to town, so mediums were able to flank round, or as I did, flank round to the side. There are a lot of tanks who took a lot of interest in me, and removing them from the battle was really, really good. I would prefer to see the snow maps removed, but then I just have an inclination to hate snow maps because of how you just seem like a bouncy castle. But mine's being another iffy one. The maps weren't such a bad choice. The only one I really seemed to have an issue with overall was just Cliff. Not specifically because of the size of the map or anything different to that. It was just the way in which people play it. Is that never seemed to change. So it was very few occasions when things sort of always gelled together and went your way. But overall, actually, not bad. The final part we're going to get on to in regards to the ins and outs, my actual personal opinion, is the XP for the final position. So at least this time around, it was a lot better. There should be probably requirement of more points to move up the league. Maybe the higher you go, the more points you require. That may come in at a later date. I think what they've got now is actually really quite good, and they can build on that. So your 100 points for winning, very, very good. The next would be personal performance points that they'd look to add in. Obviously, that will be something that I presume is added in because it was still there in this one as it has been previously, and that they maybe wanted to build on something, which I can certainly see a personal performance on the base of a winning team. Certainly so. People who get higher up the board, who do more in the game, should be rewarded for such actions. The losing team is where issues can arise. This is probably one of the negative points, which I hope again would be something they can work on. So for someone to come top of the losing team is okay and get nothing in regards to losing points, all well and good. The issue comes when you see that your team is losing. You've got to think, okay, do I try and just farm damage to get top of the leaderboard and let my teammates die? That's something that it probably needs to change. Give people the chance of maybe second or third place to get some points from it. Maybe like at least, like, say 75 for second, 50 for third, 25 for fourth, etc. Not a massive amount of points, but maybe something that offsets the fact that they're going to lose 100, because you're playing solo in a ranked battles game with people who haven't really got to grips with the game in some cases and don't take them in the right spot. So you've been handicapped in some way that a specific tank should be taken somewhere else to have a better chance of being able to actually have an influence on the game. Someone may have got dirt by Death Star, someone may have just gone out and YOLO'd for no reason and got killed. So you want to try and comfort the blow, because it's not very nice losing a game on the premise of someone else's inability to play or mistake that they made that's a relatively simple one. And I'm not trying to make it seem as if I'm belittling people, but I take great interest in trying to figure out how to play this game as best I can and learn from it. And obviously not everyone is the same as that. So I don't see it as fair to be able to have people who want to do something better, maybe work as the team, and maybe get shafted for use of a better term. Maybe they should get something back from it. Overall, as part of my final review, it has been a step in the right direction. A few tweaks and changes apparently I would assume to be coming, as what they've got now is a very, very good basis to work on. The prizing was actually fantastic, and I would hesitate to say that a lot of people made it into Grandmaster that didn't make it before. So they've given out 30 days premium, all the XP boosts up. I went from like 110,000 XP on the back chat AP, and I've got the back chat today in a very few amount of games because of the ×5. That was brilliant. The 30 days premium, the war chest that got me even more premium. No premium tanks. I've never got a premium tank in the war chests, so I think I'm being shafted by RNG. But this is a step in the right direction. I've seen some people query the point system for losing and the bad teammates, etc. But it has been a lot easier than it was before in previous rank battles to get higher up, and this is going correct. I'd like where this is going, and maybe a few tweaks. Maybe they can get it right just for the console, because the actual size of the people playing the game is only like 30 or 40 people in a queue, as compared to maybe your normal where you have maybe 100 plus depending on the server and the times. So that you've got to take that into account, that Rank Battles is always going to be its own mini game, you could so to speak, in the way it's worked out. If they are going to change something, I would say if a tank such as a Jagdpanzer 100, as this is going to be from a reference, makes 5.5k combined damage in terms of total damage and assists, and I only get 3.3k in my heavy tank, I actually came above on the XP. And I understand that TDs have the high alpha and opportunity to be able to do a lot of damage in a single shot, but an extra 2,000 combined damage over what I got, and I got more XP, that might be something that needs to be looked into, because if that's the case, I would say only play mediums and heavy tanks, because if you've got lots of tank destroyers on your team, you're probably more than likely going to come above people unless someone has a monster of a game. But that's pretty much my review on the actual rank battles, the current season. I like where it's going, and I hope to see that the changes in the future are more positive as well, and hopefully you got the position that you actually wanted. So thanks for watching the video. I shall bid you goodbye and have fun.